The children of Judah promised God that they would not break the Sabbath day commands. However, apparently they forgot their promise. They have entered into profaning the Sabbath day. In today's lesson entitled Sabbath Reforms, I want to see what did Nehemiah do about this. There are notes for this lesson. I'll leave a link in the description below and in the comment section. Click that link, get your notes, your Sunday school books, and your Bibles. For the UMI Precepts for Living and the Cogic Legacy Edition is now in session. I also have an announcement after. Join me. Let's go.
Teaching the Word of God in the spirit of excellence. Join Elder Rodney Jones with our Sunday school lesson. Building and equipping the children of God. Grab your Bibles, grab your notes. Get your lessons and get ready. Now let's go.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Sunday School Lesson as taught by Pastor Rodney Jones. I'm the pastor of the New Nation Anointed Ministries, Church of God in Christ. We're located at 1700 West 87th Street in the city of Chicago. Our zip code is 60620. If this is your first time, please leave me a comment in the comment section below that this is your first time. I'd like to welcome you to Sunday School. Thank you for tuning in and viewing this video. Make sure you do me a favor by clicking the subscribe button below. There's a bell that you will see. Click that bell and click all. So YouTube will notify you each week. Bing! Brother Jones just uploaded another lesson. Today's topic, we're going to be dealing with Sabbath reforms. I have a situation here because the book that I have been studying and teaching from, since May of 2017, when I started my Sunday school, is the Precepts for Living Publishers. However, the Precepts for Publisher for the year 23-24 have opted out in teaching the Sunday school, which means I will not be teaching starting September all the way till August of next year out of the UMI Precepts for Living. They've decided that they want to use their publishing to go through the Bible in the year. Some of you have already gotten your books not knowing that they have actually left the Sunday School series basically 2 years ago. So since that being said, I will continue with the Cogic Legacy and I will continue with the International Lesson. And from time to time, I will do your Human Gospel Press. However, there might be some days I might do this lesson, but just so you know, they're not doing the Sunday School series, and I believe they have not done so in 2 or 3 years. But we're going to get over into this lesson. We're dealing with Sabbath reforms, and we are in Nehemiah, the 13th chapter, verses 15 through 22. Ladies and gentlemen, lay down in this lesson. There's some things we're going to point out. Number one, that this lesson shows the dignity of one man. This man by the name of Nehemiah, he calls his people to stop sinning against the Sabbath. Number two, he possibly spared them another evil punishment. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the fact that he said that y'all are about to put upon us worse than what was put upon us before. And then he brought reverence and respect of the Sabbath day back to the children of Israel, at least in this lesson, it appears, because of what he's doing. He's deferring a punishment that could have taken place. And this lesson shows that one man can bring reform of God's law. Nehemiah saw the people were sinning against God once again, and he didn't stand idly by and say something without saying something and making some moves. He could not stand by and watch other people continue to do a sin against God. And he challenged the people to do right. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to challenge every last one of us. All it takes is one man to do what's right. Let's look at this lesson and let's see what this one man did. Lay down. It says, in those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses, watch this, on the Sabbath day, and bringing in the sheaves. Y'all remember that song, bringing in the sheaves? Bringing in the sheaves. We are all rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. I think that's how it goes. Bringing in the sheaves, and lading, or some says lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. Now that word victuals right there, you will find out that that really means food. So we find when this took place. The Bible lets us know it took place in those days. The I here would be Nehemiah. Nehemiah, I'm glad Abronia's not looking. Nehemiah, he saw some treading. That word treading, we're going to talk about that. Wine presses. Now, I have it in purple throughout this lesson because here's where the problem was. It was done on the Sabbath day. We're going to talk about that Sabbath. And what he saw was that they were treading and they were bringing in sheaves, lading or with lading asses. They were also bringing in wine and grapes and figs on all manner of burdens. We're going to talk about that word burdens because they were animals, which they brought into Jerusalem. And that's where the sin was, that it was done not just in Jerusalem, but that it was done on the Sabbath day. And this is where we're going to talk about. Matter of fact, let me read the second verse as well. Then we'll begin the discussion as the curtains open up. It's going to take a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Here he is. There dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and they sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah. Now, usually you will see the word Israel, but this time they're called the children of Judah. But look at the location. Notice the sin was in Jerusalem, and the sin was because of what was done on the Sabbath, and that's what we're going to deal with. So Nehemiah, number one, had gone back to Babylon in the time of King Artaxerxes, and you'll find that in the 13th chapter of the book of Nehemiah. And while in his absence, Israel had gone back into sin. They made an oath prior to this that they would not go into sin. They would not defile the Sabbath day. You'll find that in the 10th chapter of the book of Nehemiah. They promised that they would do right by God and would not break his laws again. Nehemiah 10. They even promised that they would not marry strange wives. But I'm going to leave that alone. They promised that they would honor the Sabbath day as well, the same chapter. And Israel, in the absence of Nehemiah, broke this promise once again. And Eliashib had taken the room that stored the articles of God in the temple, and he moved those items out, and he moved in the enemy by the name of Tobiah. Tobiah was an enemy of Israel. Tobiah said that if they built the wall and a fox got on the wall, that the wall would fall. It was Tobiah, Sanballat, the Arabians, and others. And here, this man moves his cousin. The Bible said that they were related. He moved his things into where the articles of God was in this room, and which committed a sin. Nehemiah, the Bible says, he removed all of Tobiah's things and threw him out and restored the place. Nehemiah had to cleanse the place and put God's stuff back into the place. That's Nehemiah the 13th chapter, verses 6 through 10. Then Nehemiah saw some people trading wine on the Sabbath day in those days, those very same days. They were bringing in sheaves of wheat or corn, and they were lading them or carrying them, or their burden was placed on the back of the asses or the animals. And the children of Israel were commanded by the Lord what to do and what not to do on the Sabbath day. You'll find that in Exodus 20. Now, he says in those days, and you'll find that in Nehemiah the 13th chapter, verses number 6 all the way through 14. Your laws of the Sabbath day, you'll find that in Exodus 20, verses 8 through 10. Some of it, and I'll let you know. Number one, this is called the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. Exodus 20 and 10. This is why this day was so important. This was a commandment given by God for them through Moses, Exodus 28 through 10. And they were to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. They were to work 6 days, but on the Sabbath day they were commanded by God, not asked. They were commanded by him to rest. And they could not work on that day, nor their children, nor their servants, nor their oxen, nor ass, nor strangers who was housed in the gate of Jerusalem. And the reason is because God said he created the heavens or the earth in 6 days. He rested the seventh day. He blessed it and caused it to be a holy day. Because they were to trust God on the seventh day. The seventh day is not just a day of rest, but the purpose of it was for them to rest and to reminisce on the blessings of God and think about as well as worship the Lord for providing for them. And God even told them by way of covenant that you work 6 days and I will provide for you on the seventh day. Here's a question I want to ask the audience. Do we still observe the Sabbath day? Is the Sabbath day still intact for the New Testament church? What is your answer? Exodus 23 and 12 says, 6 days shalt thou work, and on the seventh day thou shalt rest, that thine ox and thine ass may rest, and the son of thy handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed. He says, in those days I saw them treading, and the word tread means by implication to walk. And the winepress is a vat for holding the grapes in pressing them. So after the grapes are placed in this wine vat, the treaders will walk in the vat to crush the grapes and freeing up the juices, and the juices would flow. They were treading the wine press to prepare to sell the wine. So number one, they were working by treading, and number two, they were preparing to sell, both of which was illegal and against the commandment of God. They were bringing in the sheaves, lading on the asses. And the word sheaves simply means a heap or a pile of grain or a pile or a heap of corn. And they were lading. The word lading means to load or to impose a burden or to carry. It was being carried on the backs of the asses. And these sheaves were heaps of grain or corn that they would be bringing in. And they were bringing them in, ladies and gentlemen, because they was getting ready to trade them and to sell them. They also had figs. They had wine and grapes. And the scripture lets us know that all of this was illegal. Here's the problem, which they brought into Jerusalem on the seventh day. The writer kept saying Jerusalem, Jerusalem, because the sin took place in Jerusalem. What goes on outside of Jerusalem is among the other people. But when you're in the house of God, the place of God, God has already given them what they are supposed to do. So for them to continue this practice is to sin before God, even though they were back at home. From the beginning of time, they were stick-necked people in the house. Stick-necked. Oh, my lands, as my grandfather said, that word is stiff-necked. I wrote stick-necked. So that word, were stiff-necked people. I'm going to leave that in there. That's Exodus 32 and 9. And Israel promised that they would not buy anything. Watch this. We're not going to buy anything from nobody on that day. Nehemiah 10 and 31. In this lesson, just a few chapters later, they are buying things from others. They have broken their oath that they made with God in Nehemiah 10 and 29. And Nehemiah said, I testify against them. And that word testified means to protest, to give warning, and even to bear witness against them. Nehemiah said, I'm not going to stand idly by while this nation chooses to move against the commandments of God. There was even selling victuals. That word victuals means provision or food or even a hunting game. We would use the term food. Now, let's go and look at verses number 16. Now, he said that there were men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware. That word ware simply means merchandise or things that are sold. And sometimes they would bring them in and trade. All of this was done, ladies and gentlemen, on the Sabbath day. Let's look at verses 17 and number 18. Then I contended with the nobles. Now, these nobles had to be some people of importance because throughout the book of Nehemiah, he's always speaking to and about the nobles. He contended with the nobles of Judah and said unto them, what evil is that? Watch what he said. You did. What is it that you did that you would profane the Sabbath day? He contended. Nehemiah could not sit idly by, but he contended with the nobles of Judah. And he said unto them, what evil thing is this that ye do and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus? Did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning God. So after Nehemiah saw what was going on, he testified against those who were selling the victuals or the provisions or the game that they caught or the food. So he contended with the nobles of Judah for what was going on. He questioned them about the evil that they was doing that was taking place in Jerusalem. He reminded them of the sin that their fathers had done and God's reply to the sins that their fathers had done. But then he also stated that you all are entering into a worse thing because you're deliberately profaning the Sabbath. Now, when God gave the law to Israel, he didn't ask them to rest. He commanded. The principle is in the fact what God said. And God said that they're supposed to rest. He challenged the people. He called out their sin. The sin is you all are profaning the Sabbath. He said, I contended, which means to strive against, to make a complaint, and even to rebuke. Nehemiah was dealing with the nobles of Judah. He says, what evil thing is it that you do and profane the Sabbath? This thing. What is this thing? The word thing means business or acts or matter or case or manner. What are these acts that you're doing? What is it that you are bringing forth? What is it that you're performing that you are profaning? The word profane means to defile, it means to pollute, and it means to desecrate. Now, I don't know how many of the nobles was doing this, but I see that he came to them because they were people who were in charge, and they were some of the leaders, and they were allowing. Leadership cannot allow things to go on. Leadership cannot just turn their head. He says, did not your fathers thus? And did not our God bring all this evil upon us? Evil, this evil means this distress. Evil also means misery, injury, and calamity. Because of what our fathers did, we've received distress, we've received misery, injury, and even calamity because of the sin, and this very thing is what Israel had done prior to this. Yet you bring more wrath. Now that word wrath means sore displeasure. It's heat or burning of anger. Another way of looking at wrath is the explosion of the nostrils. That means when you get so angry until your nose expands. That's wrath. He said, yet you bring more wrath upon us by profaning. The word profane here really means to treat as common, to defile, to pollute, or desecrate the fact that God says to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. Verses 19. Fly away. See you later. So then it came to pass. Now, that says it came to pass, which means that it had to be a process of time. Uh-oh. Let me put that back. It had to be a process of time because we don't know how long, but it did come to pass ultimately right there. So that means a process. That when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark, notice when this happened, before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut and charged that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates that there should be no burden be brought in on the Sabbath. So you got before the Sabbath, you got after the Sabbath, and then you have on the Sabbath. And so, although Nehemiah was gone for a period of time, it appeared that he still had some type of authority. Because while he was back in Babylon, the people of God went back to sin. He's back and he knows the sin of the nation, and he's moving towards correcting things. There was a time that passed, he said, and it came to pass, when the gates began to be dark. And that's just another way of saying, because the sun was shining on the gate, and as the sun was going down, there was a darkness that would come upon the gate. In other words, it was beginning to be evening. Remember, he's writing according to his audience, and he's writing according to the time that they were living in. So the sun was casting a light upon the gate, and as the sun was going down, the darkness was shining upon it. So it appears that no one is arguing with him on his authoritative command. He didn't ask that they shut the gate. He commanded that they shut the gate at this time. And he also charged them, don't even open the gate. Now, he says, shut the gate before, the day before the Sabbath, shut the gate. And keep the gate shut until after the Sabbath, which would have to be the day after the Sabbath. And his reason for doing this is to make sure that there is a reverence and a respect of the Sabbath day during the Sabbath day as it relates to Israel buying, selling, and trading. So he says, I commanded. Apparently, he still had some type of authority. And then not only that, but he set some of his servants at the gate to make sure that it would take place. Now, this is the first group. There's a second group that we're going to see that he's going to place in the gate. He says that there should be no burden be brought in on the Sabbath. The word burden simply means a bearing or a carrying, a load, a tribute, or that which is carried or brought or borne in. In other words, won't nobody be bringing nothing in or nothing out, be it on an animal, a cart, or a person. The purpose of closing down this gate is so that there's no work of trading, of selling that will be taking place. Because all the animals of Judah were to rest during the Sabbath as well. Exodus 23 and 12. Verses number 20 and 21. What did it say? Lay down. So the merchants and sellers, and technically you all, that's two different people. Because sometimes the word merchant means trade, to trade. Sometimes they were traders or trade, And these here were people who actually sold. There's another term we call barter. Yes, I'm not selling this to you. I'm going to give this to you, and you give me this that I need. We're bartering for one another rather than exchange money. So the merchants and the sellers of all kind, the various types of ware or merchandise. Look at what they did. They lodged outside. The word without means outside. Yeah, they lodged outside of Judah or Jerusalem. Yeah, once or twice. Now he had to say this because this we're dealing with a period of time. That means once or either twice of the Sabbath day or something. He's not talking about minutes or seconds. They did this once or twice, which possibly appears to mean that the gate had been closed in more than one time. We're going to talk about that. We'll come back to that. Verses number 21, my vortex, he says, then I testified against them and said unto them, why lodge ye about the wall? If you do so again, I think y'all need to read this. Look at what Nehemiah said. If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth, came they no more. Nehemiah put out a threat and says, I'd rather lay hands on you than God bring an evil upon this nation again. He had to threaten them to put his hands on them. Now, what do y'all think that he means? Write it in the description in the comment section below. What y'all think Nehemiah was hinting around? Do you think that Nehemiah said that he was going to do bodily harm? What is your answer? Oh, I would love to see what y'all's answer is. So Nehemiah, upon his return, he saw that Israel was sinning against the Sabbath day. And there were merchants and sellers that were bringing items into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. The children of Israel were purchasing these items from them on the Sabbath day. Nehemiah challenged them due to the sin and reminded them of the sins of their fathers. And then he commanded that the gate be shut before the Sabbath until after the Sabbath. He set some of his servants on the gate to make sure that it will stay closed so that there won't be no trading, no selling, no carrying, no merchandise, no merchants or sellers. And the merchants began to set up shop outside of the gate, possibly hoping that the children of Judah would come outside of the gate so that they can barter or sell or trade. And when they set up shop outside the gate, Nehemiah stepped to the traders and said, I'm trying to tell you fellas that you all are causing us to sin a great sin. I'm going to need you to pack up and move away from us. Nehemiah says, if you don't do it, I will lay hands on you. So the merchants, which means to travel or trade, to go about, they were traders. They were sellers of all kind of, and the sellers of all kind of ware. The word ware means that which is sold, and it also means merchandise. The word lodge means to stop over, to pass the night, or to abide. In other words, they just set up shop temporarily for a period of time. Now he said, I testify, which means to give them warning, to charge, and even to protest again about them staying overnight outside of these walls. He says, move. If you don't, you've got to deal with me. My man, I wish I could meet Nehemiah. Yes, and lastly, not only did he protest or testify, he says, and I commanded the Levites that they should cleanse themselves, and that they should come and keep the gates to sanctify the Sabbath day. When he gets through, he says, remember me, O my God. Concerning this also, because this is not the first time Nehemiah asked God to remember him, He says, and I need you to spare me according to the greatness of thy mercy. So Nehemiah had already set up his servants, remember? He set them up at the gate in verses 19. He set his servants up at the gate to keep the merchants out on the Sabbath, verses 19. He shut the gate to keep the children of Israel from sinning on the Sabbath and to keep the merchants out. Before Nehemiah called the Levites forth to perform a duty, he charges them to sanctify themselves. He commanded that the Levites would first cleanse themselves to do this specific work. Because the Levites were given to worshiping of the Lord, to whatever the needs of the Lord were, the Levites were to perform these particular actions. Nehemiah already had some of his people on the wall at the gate. Now he's getting ready to put the Levitical priesthood or the Levites out here as well. First, he tells them to cleanse themselves. He doesn't tell us how. If they had to take a bath, if they had to wash their clothes, if they had to sprinkle upon them, each one of these things were forms or ways that they would cleanse themselves. Because on the Sabbath day, Israel could do no work nor use animals. That's Exodus 23 and 12. He said, I commanded them to cleanse. The word cleanse means to be clean, pure, to purify, or to perform the ceremony of cleansing. Maybe they had to be ceremonially clean by performing some type of ritual. The purpose of him calling them was to keep. The word keep means to guard, to watch, to ward, or even to protect the gate. And he says, and to sanctify the Sabbath day. The word sanctify means to consecrate, to dedicate, or to be hallowed, or to be holy, because Israel had caused the Sabbath day not to be sanctified anymore. And Nehemiah had to reform the Sabbath day by causing the Levites to come to cleanse and sanctify themselves, to keep the gate so that that day can be remembered, can be holy, and can be reverenced once again. And then he says, remember me, Lord, and spare me according to the greatness of thy mercy. The word mercy means his goodness, his kindness, his faithfulness, and sometimes that word also means his unfailing love. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching this channel. Do me a favor, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you share these Sunday school videos. Introduce it to someone that you know that does not attend Sunday school. There are thousands of people that have not returned back into their churches. Many are just dwindling away, if I can use that term, at home. Invite them to Sunday school. If they're not able to attend or go, give them or share this with them. Leave me some comments below. I'd like to know your thoughts on this particular lesson. Remember the questions that I asked. What do you think Nehemiah really was going to do? Was he going to do bodily harm to them? What do you think? Also, keep in mind that this is the last lesson. This is the absolute last lesson for the precepts for living. I'm hurt, but I've been with them since day one of my Sunday school tenure. How many of y'all have been with me since May of 2017? I started with May of 2017 with the UMI Precepts for Living. That was the first book I got for the Sunday school. And now they're no longer doing the Sunday school series, so this is the last time I will be teaching from that lesson, from that publisher. I will still do the Cogic Legacy and the International, and from time to time I will still be doing the Union Gospel Press. I will look in their book because they chose to do the read the Bible in 1 year. That's the method that they chose to use. So many don't understand that your lesson, and I know a lot of people are going to ask me, how come my lesson is not lining up? That's because you might have that book, and next week your books will no longer be part of the Sunday school material. All right? Make sure you like and subscribe. Lord's willing, if the creek don't rise, if the Lord delay is coming, and providing that I don't oversleep, I'll see you all Sunday at 9 o'clock for my live stream. I'm trying to find my exit. I think I found it. Remember my motto: teaching the Word of God in the spirit of excellence. Peace.